Okay. So last week we ended up having a lesson on a number of properties, right? We just corrected the homework assignments. But when we came across a certain property, I said, guys, just wait a second. Just write down some quick, easy notes, and we'll talk about it later because this property is like the main 7th grade property. It's a new property to you guys, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be teaching you guys about something called the distributive property. Okay, as a matter of fact, today, as well as our next classes, we're going to talk about this. But it's only because I'm going to teach you two different ways, two different methods. Okay, today is called, it's just a very informal way of calling it. It's called the rainbow method. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a bit. Now, like properties the other day, I kind of try to give you guys some clues of how to remember the properties. Okay, and we talked a lot about root words. So the root word here, I should say, or the word that this property is called is distributive. All right, what would be the root word? At least the verb form of this word. Does anyone know?
Distribute.
To distribute. Okay. Now, if I distribute your homework papers, what would that mean? If I distribute your homework papers, what would that mean?
You'd be passing them out.
I'd be passing them out to you guys. Okay? And that's basically what we're talking about here. So, to distribute is to kind of hand out or to pass out. Okay? So, that's kind of what this property has. Now, I'll be kind of referring back to that here in a second. But our very first word, okay, our very first phrase here is distributive property. Everyone?
Distributive property.
Okay, now the book, here's its definition. To multiply a sum by a number, you multiply each add-in of the sum by the number outside the parentheses. To multiply a sum by a number, multiply each add-in of the sum by the number outside the parentheses. Now, that may not mean much to you, and I don't blame you. All right, there's a lot of math verbiage there, all right? But I'm going to go back to it. It's stuff that you will understand once we break it down. Here's what I'd like you to do for right now also. This might not make a whole lot of sense to you yet either, but go ahead and write this down. Start with this in your little box, okay? And you're going to have to squeeze this in on your vocab. So 4 times, and then in parentheses, the sum of 6 plus 2. 6 plus 2. Now, what distributive property says is that this is the same, or equal, of course, to this. So, 4 times 6 plus 4 times 2. Now, this here, if you were to simplify it, kind of like our POD, would be equal or the same as this. 24 plus 8. And of course that is equal to that, 32. Okay, now let me talk a little more about distributive property and what this definition is saying. Okay, so it says to multiply a sum by a number. Here's what they're talking about. The word sum is talking about what's in the parentheses when two numbers are combined. Sometimes it could be subtraction, but in this case it's addition, 6 plus 2. But you're multiplying the sum by a number. Well, the number they're talking about is this number outside the parentheses. And here's what they're saying. You multiply each add-in. This is an add-in, and this is an add-in, because they're being added to each other. Okay? You multiply each of those by the number outside the parentheses. So bottom line is here's what we're doing. We're taking the 6 and we're multiplying it with the 4. Look at that. There it is. And then you're taking the 2 and you're multiplying it by the 4. There it is. And that's how we get 32. Now, some of you may be thinking ahead and going, okay, Mr. Wilkins, that's good and all, but can't I can do that in my head. 6 plus 2 is 8. 8 times 4 is 32. Why do we need to know all this? Isn't this like garbage? Like, this is ridiculous. This is all extra work. Why do we need to know this? Well, that would be a good statement. You're thinking, here's what we're doing. This is not necessarily a problem you're going to see as a 7th grader. What they're doing is they're using an easier problem. You'll see this on our homework. We're using an easier problem that you could actually use order of operations and might be able to solve it in your head. But we're using it to show you how to do distributive property. Okay, to see how it comes out to get that number. Then you can turn around and check your answer by using order of operations. Okay, do what's in parentheses first, right? And then multiply it. So in just a little while, you're going to see a 7th grade version of this problem where you're going to need to use the distributive property to get around the parentheses, to simplify it. Okay? So that's what we're going to be doing. All right? So before we move on to some of our examples, here's what else I'd like you guys to do. Let's go ahead. One more expression here. All right? And that is equivalent expressions. Everyone?
Equivalent expressions.
So here's what the book says. These are expressions that have the same value. Okay? Expressions that are equivalent or equal. They have the same value. We'll talk a lot about these as we go through this chapter. However, here's just considering that we're talking about distributive property. Here's what you can write down. You have that expression there. Go ahead and write that down in your box there. 3 times and then x plus 4. Okay, in parentheses that is. And then go ahead and write that down. 3x plus 12. 3x plus 12. All right. Now, they don't look exactly the same, but they would be considered equivalent. So you can put a little equal sign there. Those have the same value. They're two expressions. When they're by themselves, they're expressions, and they have the same value. Okay, here's what I'd like you guys to do. Go ahead and grab your book and flip your book over to page 379. 379. And then I need eyes up here, ready to go. Okay. Here's what I'd like you guys to do. We have the words, I do. All right, that's because I want you to take your pencil, set it down, because I just want you to watch this first one. Okay, I know this is part of your homework. I'll give you guys like 20 seconds afterwards to just copy down what I write down. I just want you to watch. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and write this down. Number 1 it says is 3 times, then in parentheses, the sum of 5 and 6. 5 plus 6. Okay. Now, here's what I would like you guys to do. Let's get this out of the way now. Before we do anything, okay, not with your pencil, just I would like you to try using mental math. I want you to use order of operations and try to just get the answer to that problem. Okay, don't shout it out yet. Just look at that. Try to get the answer in your head from this problem right here. I'll give you just a couple seconds there. Take a look. See if you can't get the answer. Give me a thumbs up when you have the answer. Okay? Those of you that got it, what's the answer, everyone?
33.
All right, so let's get this out of the way. The answer is 33. Again, like I was saying, what we're about to do is not about the answer. It's the nice part is they're giving us something easy, so when I get done, I can then check to see if the answers match. That's what's important. Okay, that's why it starts off easy like this. Let's go ahead and let's read the directions right above number 1 there in our book. Okay, here we go. Use the
Distributive
property to evaluate each expression. Okay, so it's not about the answer, it's about the use of the distributive property. Okay, so here we go. what I need you guys to do, again, a couple of you guys, I'm proud of you, you're excited to write this down, but I just want you to put your pencil down for a second. Okay? Here we go. I just want you to watch. Now, when I use distributive property, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead, I see that I have the sum of two numbers with a number being multiplied on the outside. I'm going to go ahead and circle all of those numbers, and including, of course, the sign in front. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to distribute this number on the outside with both numbers on the inside. So 3, and when I say distribute, I'm talking in multiplication. 3 times 5, and I'm going to always put a plus sign in here because I'm going to combine these two, and then 3 times 6. After that, I'm going to go ahead and simplify. This looks like our POD, so I'm going to go ahead and do my multiplication first. 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 6 is 18. Rewrite my problem. And 15 plus 18 is 33, which, of course, is the right answer. That is distributive property. Now, I just used the rainbow method. Who can tell me, why do you think that it's called the rainbow method?
Because it has
These are the lines here. When you're connecting the outside with everything on the inside, all the numbers on the inside of the parentheses, and multiplying them, okay? If you're connecting them properly, it should give you kind of, you have to use your imagination a little bit, but it's kind of like a rainbow. All right, so that's just one way to do the distributive property. That's how we're going to focus in on it today. All right. Okay, questions about that? Okay, we're actually just hold on. I don't see any questions, but hold off if you do have a question, because we're actually going to do another one, but we'll go step by step. But I did promise you guys like 20 seconds. Go ahead, really quickly, write that down. Okay, anyone need more time on copying that down? Okay, a few more seconds. Okay, here we go. Let's go ahead and let's do one together, all right, by step. So let's go ahead and let's go over to page 378. So look at the other page. And we're going to write our notes here. Let's take a look at problem number 1. Okay, problem number 1 has something that looks a little bit different, but the directions are still the same. Telling us to use distributive property. What we have is we have the sum of 8 and 11 times -3. It's written just like that. Okay, here we go. Step 1. Now, step 1. Here's what I'm going to do. Go ahead and put a little star by this. Now, this isn't exactly necessary, but it does help some people out, okay? Just because they're used to going left to right. So if that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and use we talked about this just the other day, right? Commutative property of multiplication. What that means is I have this here multiplied with that. I'm okay flip-flopping them, switching them. Right? So ultimately, here's what I'm doing. I'm taking these two, and I'm going to move this in front of this one by doing this. So I'm going to go ahead and put -3 here. I don't even have to write my parentheses once I put it up front. Times 8 plus 11. All I did was flip-flop. Put the -3 to the left. Okay, step 2. I'm going to go ahead and circle all of my what's actually called terms when we do this, but we'll call them right now numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and circle my numbers. So I have -3 on the outside, +8, and a +11 on the inside. Now comes step 3, and that is I'm going to do distributive property. I'll put DP right here, but if you don't know what that means and write out distributive property, feel free. But I'm going to do the distributive property, and again, today I'm going to use what we'll call the rainbow method. So, here we go. -3 times 8. So -3 times 8. And then don't forget, of course, your addition sign there. And then I need to make my second rainbow, -3 times +11. Now comes step 4. I'm going to go ahead and simplify these. And while you simplify, keep in mind the order of operations. So I go ahead, and in this case, I'm just doing the multiplication first. So 3 times 8 is 24. Of course, they're different signs, so it gives me a -24. -3 times 11. Well, 3 times 11 is 33. That, of course, is also a negative because they are different signs. And then remember, anytime we simplify like this and we're doing order of operations, we rewrite. So -24 plus -33. Now, we were talking about T-charts earlier. You can build a T-chart if you'd like, but I see that they're both negatives, and I know if they're both negatives, they'd be like on the same side of the T-chart. So I would just add them up. So if I need to, I can go over to the side and just say, what is 33 plus 24? It ends up being 57. But don't forget, of course, it's a -57. If you have -24 and 33 negatives, it's a total of 57 negatives. And there's our answer. All right. Okay, questions on any 4 of those? Step 2 is I circled the integers. Someone in the earlier period said, well, Mr. Williams, why are you having us do that? Well, because some people are still struggling, and sometimes if this is a negative, if you don't include that negative, okay, it will alter your answer. So making sure you're including especially the negatives when you're doing the rainbow method. Okay. Got to have the true value of each of the integers. Any other questions? I'm going to have you guys try one. Okay, here we go. The one I want you guys to try is go back to your homework, try out problem number 2 on 379. Problem 2. Okay, go. All right, anyone need more time on that one? Okay. All right, give you about 20 to 30 more seconds there. Okay, when you share with your neighbor, make sure, I mean, obviously the answer is important, but it's not the most important, right? The most important part is making sure that you're showing your distributive property correctly. Okay, so make sure you guys compare not only your answer, but compare your work as well. All right, 30 seconds, go.
think you added an extra. Because 12 times 10 equals negative.
Okay. All right, well, let's check this out. All right, so page 379, problem number 2. You had the sum of 6 and 4 multiplied to negative 12. Now, hopefully, we just talked about it earlier, 6 plus 4 is 10. Well, anything times 10, you just put an extra 0 behind it. This should be a negative 120 when you're finished. Okay, so let's go ahead and use distributive property. I'm going to use step 1. I'm going to flip-flop them or switch them around, commutative property of multiplication, and say negative 12 times 6 plus 4. And then I'm going to go ahead and circle my integers. So I have my negative 12, my 6, and my positive 4. And now I'm going to use the rainbow method. Negative 12 times 6 plus negative 12 times 4. Now, using order of operations, 6 times 12, some of you may have gone over to the side to simplify that. It ends up being 72. Of course, in this case, it's a negative 72. And then 12 times 4 is 48. And of course, negative times a positive is also a negative. And just like the problem we just did a bit ago, this is 72 negatives. Thinking back of our tile method on doing integers, 72 negatives, another 48 negatives. That's going to be a lot of negatives. Because, of course, they're the same sign, so we add them together. That's 10, carry the 1, 11 plus 1 is, look at there, negative 120. Okay? Questions on that? Okay, now let's move on to the nitty-gritty of it all, and let's go ahead and use this skill. It's exactly the same steps, but now you're going to see some things. We're going to use other skills that we've talked about in previous lessons to solve this. This is a 7th grade kind of problem. All right, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at problem number 8 on page 379. We have 4 times x minus 6y. Okay. So you're going to see, I'm going to go through all these steps here. So the very first step, step 1, that's if this one integer is over to the right. It's not. It's already sitting over on the left, so I don't have to do step 1. Step 2, circle all of my terms in here. I'm going to circle my 4. Now this isn't a number, but we know x represents a number. I'm going to circle it's a positive x. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to circle, this is maybe a little new to us, but I'm going to circle this whole thing here, negative 6y. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do distributive property. I'm going to use the rainbow method, so I have negative 4 times x. I'm sorry, positive 4 times x. So 4 times x. I'm going to write down my addition sign. And then I keep going with my rainbow method, 4 times negative 6y. So 4 times negative 6y. Okay, now I go ahead and simplify. So I go ahead and say 4 times x. Guys, what's 4 times x? 4x, right? 4x. Okay, and then I go ahead and simplify this. Well, this is actually kind of like off of our property worksheet. So we have 4 times negative 6, which gives us negative 24 times y, which is just negative 24y. Bring my addition sign down. And you're absolutely right. So now what we can do is this, I will actually take this for an answer, but in the future I will not. We can actually double this up and say, instead of 2 signs like this, it's just 4x minus 24y. Either one of those will work. This is the more simplified answer, and that's the one we'll be working towards as we get better at this. Okay. If you notice, I didn't write any steps down because all I did was I just followed these exact 4 steps. Right? This is a 7th grade version. Why? Because up here you can say, oh, 5 plus 6 is 11. 11 times 3 is 33. Well, x minus 6y we can't do in our heads. We don't even know what x or y is. So the way to get rid of the parentheses is by using distributive property. And that's why, of course, it's a 7th grade skill. Okay, questions on those steps? All right, distributive property with the rainbow method.